We're going to be talking about new technology and subsequent musculoskeletal disorders. So I'll turn it over to you to start with.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm the newest ergonomist at OCAL, and Trevor's our most senior. That doesn't mean he's the oldest, but I am. That doesn't mean I'm the youngest at all either. So today's presentation is going to be on when technology hurts. I don't know if anybody here within their workplace or home environment are noticing using more tablets, laptops, cell phones. Anyone here having that happening in the workplace more often, or still? Yeah. So we're noticing this trend now of just technology is kind of, we're being immersed in it. It's happening really fast, and we're having to adapt to it. But they haven't really, we haven't really found a good way. We're given these items, and we just use them. They're not necessarily set up properly for us. So we're just gonna. There's some research on it, and some, just like Mike said, there's a lot of research that was done in like 2008. But at that time, you're looking at, they had cell phones like Zach Morris cell phones, and then we were going smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, now cell phone screens are going bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're seeing the literature from before doesn't really apply to right now. Okay. So just an overview of the presentation. We're going to go through some statistics and looking at what internet in Canada and throughout the world is and how the trends have gone. The types of new technology, which again is mainly we're looking at the tablets, laptops, and cell phones. The challenges it presents. Trevor is going to go into more detail about the musculoskeletal disorders. I'm going to look at the review of literature, look at some solutions and what we can do in the office place, and then we'll take any questions at that time. So the new technology that we're seeing, again, is our tablets, laptops. Laptops aren't necessarily seen as new technology, but they're becoming more and more in the workplace, whether it's because we need to be more mobile, we're having meetings off-site. So we're seeing more and more laptops being used in the workplace and getting away from desktop computers. Tablets, again, because we're on the move, and we're seeing these not just in the workplace, but we're seeing them at home. We're seeing them actually in the school a lot. So internet use in Canada. Canadian internet now is shifting from our desktop computer to more mobile devices. 3 out of 4 Canadians now own smartphones. Does anyone here not own a smartphone? I don't know actually if you can purchase a phone that isn't a smartphone anymore, but it's just more common. Some of these statistics are coming from 2013, which again doesn't seem that long ago, but how fast technology is turning and winding its wheels, it's probably closer to that. Most people in Canada have one. I mean, my grandfather, who's 85, he has one. He has a Kindle. I mean, you're immersed in it, and you know it. Really, it doesn't leave you with an option now. Social media, so your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitter is the top activity that we see people on internet for. Tablets have now overtaken desktop computers for the gamers. The gamers were kind of those one last standing people that were going to the desktop computers. Now we see them using tablets because, again, the technology has allowed the graphics to get better. They can interact with it. And Ericsson Mobility 2014 is projecting about 5.6 billion smartphone subscriptions globally by 2019. Currently, 1.3 million Canadians use only mobile devices to access the internet. So I know myself, I am on I would say my phone most of the time on the internet. I don't have a desktop computer, or sorry, we do have a desktop computer at home. It's currently collecting dust because we don't use it anymore. So this is looking at the internet use. So we looked just in 1995 when we had just over 10%, so like 15% of internet usage, and now we're in 2011, it's at 80%. So you would think now in 2017, it's probably more like 90% people have internet, like if not even higher. It's almost to the point that you can't not have internet. Everything kind of revolves around having internet. And can I just get you to click? This is just kind of, do you remember this moment? So this is the throwback to everyone's nightmare. So I just thought it was funny because that's the sound we always used to hear. And I can remember, like, so that took minutes. And now if we don't have internet at like a split second, we're agitated. We're so frustrated. And I can remember getting online, sitting there just waiting for ICQs. I'm showing my age. Like this is social media, just waiting for it. And then it would go off. And then you're clicking online again. So we've really come a long way since that. And that was only in like, I would say that would be I was in high school, so that would be like the late 1990s, and now you have it literally at your fingertips now. So looking at laptop statistics, I like to compare this one. When I went to university, I was given the choice. You needed a computer. So either you're going to have a desktop computer or you're going to have a laptop computer. At that time, laptop computers, there was a $500 to $600 difference between desktop computers. Well, that gap now is essentially either closed or it's within $50. And most people, you're going to take something that's going to be more mobile to you. It's lightweight. So most people are going the direction of a laptop compared to a desktop computer now. You see mainly desktop computers in the workplace than compared to at home. 68% of the laptop usage, again, is in the workplace. So whether that's for mobility, sometimes desk space, there's not a lot of desk space, so they choose to use a laptop computer, and it allows you to be able to work from home because there's a lot of companies that are trying to maintain that work-life balance. So by giving you a laptop to work of, you can work from home on it. And now what's happening with laptops, we're having them incorporating a lot of the touch screen that you see on tablets. So that's adding another complexity to it. Looking at tablet and smartphone statistics, so 2/3 of Canadians, again, own smartphones, and again, we think this number is probably a lot higher now. In 2014, 49% of Canadians own tablets, and that was up 10% from 2013. And I can assume that's probably, I would think close to 70%. Just a quick tally, how many people have a tablet here? Like not physically here, but just have one they want. So most people own a tablet now. So that statistic is, probably low, and that was just like 3 years ago. So technology, we're really being immersed in it, and we're having to, kind of adapt to it. Currently, there's 28.8 million wireless subscribers in Canada, and more Canadians now own cell phones than they have a landline. I know myself, we have a landline, but we only have it because it was cheaper. If we didn't have it, it was going to be more expensive. So we have one, and we have a corded phone hooked up to it, and we don't use it, and I couldn't even tell you the number of it. But so I think most people, has anybody else gone that route here? Just use their cell phones and don't have a landline at home anymore? Yeah, a lot of people have, because it's cheaper. Why? If someone needs to get a hold of you, you're always going to have your cell phone on you, right? So I can just imagine when my daughters get older, though, I might have to have a house phone at that time, but for right now, sticking with my cell phone. Canadians now, too, are consuming approximately 1 gig of data every month. So I'm not super computer savvy, so 1 gig of data, I wanted to know what that looked like. So this is what it kind of comes down to. So 1 gig of data, and you have to keep in mind, these are based on the data used on your phone, not when you're connected to wireless, so it's not using your data. So we can only assume that this is probably more. So because this is in 1 month, so if you're on the internet 44 hours in 1 month, seems like a lot, but that's not even just over an hour a day, really. You can be on Facebook for 51 hours, watch 68 YouTube videos, send a lot of emails, Google Maps for 17 hours, Skype 4 hours, and 256 tracks on Spotify. So it is quite a bit, 1 gig, but then you kind of sit back and you think of how much you're actually using these devices, you're probably way over that. But if you're hooked up to wireless, you're not digging into that data. So now, what are the implications of all this, and the increased tablet use, increased laptops, and using our cell phone? They haven't really looked at the implications of the human body when interacting with these devices. They initially were supposed to be more short-term devices, and now we're using them for more extended periods of time. And the implications that we're seeing a lot of musculoskeletal disorders associated with the use of these. Because we have small devices, our postures change when we're interacting with them. We don't have the proper workstation set up for long-term use. So we're seeing neck and shoulder pain is becoming more prominent. We're seeing some wrist, thumb issues just because of the nature. When you think of texting, how you're using your thumbs, we're using our thumbs the way they never were designed to be used. Where I think we're really going to see the implications, though, is the younger generation. The increased use of this technology from kindergarten to grade 12 is crazy. My oldest daughter is in senior kindergarten, and they literally have a cart. The tablets come in, and I've seen pictures on Twitter of it, because you can follow your kids now when they're in school. And they're exactly like that bottom picture. They set them right on the desktop. So what you see then is that you have these kids with their necks bent down, and here is where it's kind of alarming, is because their skeletal growth is still happening during that time, and we're putting so much force on the neck, the shoulders, all of that during a key growth period for these children. So this is where I would like to see more research done and more interventions and school boards looking at the setup for the children, because they're there 8 hours a day. It's like a job for them too, right? Not to say that they're using them for 8 hours, but you have a lot of young kids using small devices, and they're just throwing them and you use them. It's not like you go to a computer lab like you did 10 years ago when you got to go there twice a week. You're now, technology is a great thing. It's a really great tool for learning, but we just need to look at the implications it has on us physically. There's been some studies done with the younger generation looking at musculoskeletal discomfort, and it's associated with children using laptop computers for prolonged poor posture. And they found that what happened, not only did they have poor posture, but regardless of them having poor posture and them feeling some sort of discomfort, 26% of the kids would just continue on. So they're in pain, but they're still continuing on because they're doing something that they like, they're interacting with it. So that's kind of alarming, because at that point when they're feeling the pain, something's really going on inside. We need to look at considerations for the typing posture. These kids, again, if you're using a tablet, they're using the actual touch screen. There's not always external devices. Laptops are potentially placed on workstations that are high, and so they're reaching up to them. So there's a lot of different things that we need to look at when we're having our children use them. Even at home, you want to make sure you have some type of a stand to get those neutral neck postures when children are looking at them. This was another study that looked at the 3D muscle activity, and the mean age was around 5.6 years, and it compared tablet use to desktop computer to paper task. And what they found here is that tablet use was, again, associated with more neck and trunk flexion and elevated shoulders and greater muscle activity around the neck. So something is clearly happening when you're using them, and it was very, very closely related to even pen and paper tasks, because a lot of times pen and paper tasks, you think of the same thing. Your paper's flat on the workstation or the desk, and you're looking straight down. So this is definitely an area that is under-researched, and not just that, but it's something that we need to do a better job of, getting these neutral postures going in the classroom. And now I'm going to give it to Trevor.
Thanks, Melissa. No, it's funny when she's talking about new technology, because I don't know how many of you have talked to your kids or your grandkids. I remember one time our internet was out. My daughter, she's 8. Oh no, what am I going to do? There's no internet. Play a game, read a book, go outside and play. No, the internet's my life. No, honey, when Daddy was little, we didn't have the internet. What? Matter of fact, I had a black and white TV. A what? Yeah, when you talk about computers being slow, who here remembers the cassette drives? Okay, like a few of us here in the audience. I mean, the VIC-20s with the cassette tape, or the floppy disks were like record players. Records, there's another technology that's gone. I mean, it's insane how quickly things change, and the younger generation, how they just don't get it. So a lot of this presentation for the MSD part of it I find it hilarious because I'm seeing it already, as Melissa was saying, in my own kids at home. So MSDs related to cell phone and tablet use are on the rise due to increased time spent on the devices, adopting awkward postures, mechanical pressures, forceful exertions, repeated loading, and also duration of loading. The most reported MSD associated with cell phone use is upper extremity and neck pain. Most people report MSDs associated with cell phone use who has upper extremity muscle pain. And the common related MSDs are BlackBerry thumb, text neck or eye hunch. In our place, we call that iPad neck at our house. Cell phone elbow, cubital tunnel syndrome, also known as ulnar neuropathy, and also eye strain. The main areas of discomfort, the thumb. The thumb is responsible for 50% of the function of our hands. It does circumduction, so moving in a circle, abduction, moving away from the hand, adduction, moving in, and they work in opposition to the fingers. The neck, long periods of excessive neck flexion can lead to fatigue and discomfort. The elbow, prolonged and static flexion of the elbows can lead to nerve compression. And the shoulder, supporting the devices or reaching to the screen. Now, de Quervain's tenosynovitis, or texting thumb, the thumbs were not designed for forceful repetitive motions. They're designed to stabilize. Over the years that we've done RSI Day, I've often given an example of pinch forces and why pinching is bad. So to reiterate for those who aren't familiar with my analogy, if my remote was 10 pounds and I'm using my whole hand to hold it, we would assume I've got about 2 pounds of force on my forefingers and my thumb. But if I'm pinching it, I've not got about 5 pounds of force on my thumb and my index finger. So by going to a pinch grip, which is often what we do when we're texting, we're actually increasing the amount of exertion on those tendons and at the same time causing it to be used more. Now, tendons connect muscles to bones. So in this example here, or in your own hand, you've got your muscle about here, and then a tendon attaching to a bone, and a tendon attaching to a bone. So when we move, the muscle shortens, and we'll pull the tendons in the direction we want it to go. Now, tendons are lined with a synovial sheath. It's called and inside is a product called tenosynovium, which acts as a lubricant to prevent friction. So when we start doing a lot of texting, a lot of repetitive motions with the thumb, we'll get irritation on the tendons. So the sheath secretes the fluid called synovium to reduce the amount of friction in order to combat the inflammation. Now the inflammation is called tenosynovitis. So that's where the tenosynovitis comes from. So de Quervain was the scientist who discovered the disorder, and the tenosynovitis is what happens at the tendon. Symptoms, primary symptoms consist of pain, tenderness, swelling over the thumb side of the wrist in the area of the anatomical snuff box. In case people don't know what the snuff box is, there's a picture of it. It's when you extend your thumb out, and you can see that little space there. Back in the 1800s, you often heard people would often sniff snuff, so they would just sprinkle a little bit in there, and there you go. So you see in a lot of the older movies with the fancy lords and ladies walking around and, oh, darling. That's what we end up seeing them doing. The pain itself spreads down into the forearm and into the wrist and thumb. The tendons may actually begin to squeak as they move through the tunnel. Performing abduction, moving the thumb away from the hand, an extension of the thumb often worsens the pain, and the strength of hand movements such as pinching and grasping are commonly reduced. Thank you. Non-surgical procedures for this. A special forearm splint called a thumb spica splint may be used. This keeps the wrist and the lower joints of the thumb from moving. The splint allows the adductor pollicis longus and the extensor pollicis brevis tendons to rest, giving them a chance to begin healing. Anti-inflammatories medications may also help to control the swelling, the tenosynovium, and these symptoms. A doctor may suggest the injection of a corticosteroid into the irritated tunnel if the splinting does not work. The steroid itself reduces the swelling of the synovium and may relieve symptoms temporarily. Injections will reduce the inflammation in the early stages of the problem. Physiotherapy may also be required to reduce or eliminate the cause of irritation of the thumb tendons. For surgery, the goal of surgery is to give the tendons more space so they no longer rub inside the tunnel. So they'll often perform a surgical release of the roof of the tunnel. A small incision is made along the thumb side of the wrist, and the surgeon will remove aside the other tissues and locate the tendons in the tunnel. Incision is made to split the roof or top of the tunnel, which creates more space for the tendons. The tunnel will eventually heal closed, but it will be larger than before. The scar tissue will then fill in the gap where the tunnel was cut, and the skin is then stitched together and the hand wrapped in a bulky dressing. Eye hunch or text neck. MSDs are related to looking down at the tablet or cell phone and other devices too long, the main risk factor. As I said, I'll often see my kids laying sideways on the couch, curled up in a ball, reading the iPad like this. Honey, sit up, you're going to hurt your back and neck. But Dad, it's comfortable. No, it's not. Hour later, my neck is sore. What we do at our house, if they are on a bit too much, if they don't listen to it, they put the iPad away, I turn off the Wi-Fi, so then they have no reason to play. Thank God most of the games they use are web-based, or internet-based. The strain of the neck muscles increases 3 to 5 times when using a tablet compared to sitting with the head in a neutral position. So once we start bending forward, we start experiencing more pain. The neck position also increases mechanical loads on the neck. So in this example, you can see the further a head moves forward, the increased weight. So if we actually extend our head forward a full 60 degrees, oh, I can hear myself better now. The amount of weight exerted around what's called C6, C7, which is the main articulation point of the neck, is equivalent to 60 pounds just through gravity acting on our head. So the average human head weighs between 10 and 12 pounds. So by shifting the neck forward, each increment of degrees, we can increase the amount of strain on the neck. So leaning forward increases the amount of forward. A 45-degree angle is typical when texting. So if you go back to the previous slide, 45-degree angle. So basically you've got about almost 50 pounds of weight exerted on your head or on your neck every time you're texting. Stretching your tissues for long periods of time. So once we start leaning forward, we start elongating the muscles and ligaments of our neck. It can cause them to get sore, inflamed, and lead to muscle strain. We could also get pinched nerves, herniated discs, and over time it can actually start to lose the curvature of our neck. The next one is ulnar neuropathy or cubital tunnel syndrome. In the past, I've done talks on carpal tunnel syndrome. So you've all heard of carpal tunnel syndrome. The main symptom of cubital tunnel syndrome is actually numbness and tingling in your pinky and the inside of your ring finger. Now, from an anatomical standpoint, right in this area of our neck, we have 7 different nerves coming off down into the shoulder that form together and create the median and the ulnar nerve. So the median nerve is what's with carpal tunnel syndrome. Ulnar nerve is with cubital tunnel syndrome. At the back of the elbow, the ulnar nerve passes through a tunnel of muscle and ligament and bone, which is called the cubital tunnel. The nerve ends in the hand, supplying feeling to the pinky and half the ring finger. It's caused by prolonged flexion of the elbow. So, bending your elbow when you're talking on the phone. We often see a lot of times people typing on, if they're typing on a desk and resting with their arms up, or even long-haul truck drivers will see it with driving, resting their arm up on the armrest. That all causes compression of the ulnar nerve. So when the elbow is bent, the nerve itself stretches and pushes against the elbow. And the nerve actually will stretch several millimeters when the elbow itself is bent. Symptoms, numbness and tingling in the little finger and outside of the ring finger, pain in the elbow, and the symptoms may worsen with fatigue and weakness, difficulty gripping, and curling the pinky and ring finger. So common treatments, once again, anti-inflammatories to reduce swelling around the nerves. Those steroids such as cortisone are very effective anti-inflammatory medicines. Steroid injections are not used because there is a risk of damage to the nerve because it's such a small space. There could be bracing or splinting, padded brace or splint to wear at night to help keep your elbow in a straight position so you're not kind of sleeping like this. And also nerve gliding exercises. Some doctors believe that the exercises help the outer nerves slide through the cubital tunnel at the elbow, and that the Guyon's canal, which is what that space is called, at the wrist, can improve the symptoms. These exercises may also help prevent stiffness in the arm and wrist. For surgery, there's two different procedures that can be done. The first is the cubital tunnel release. So this is where the ligament or roof of the cubital tunnel is cut and divided, which increases the amount of size of the tunnel and decreases pressure on the nerve. After the procedure, the ligament itself begins to heal, and new tissue grows over the division. The new growth heals the ligament and allows more space for the outer nerve to the side slide through. The cubital tunnel release tends to work best when the nerve compression is mild or moderate, and the nerve itself does not slide out from behind the bony ridge of the medial epicondyle. The other option, of course, is a medial appendectomy. The bones at neither side of our elbow are called epicondyles. So what this surgery involves is actually removing part of the bone itself, the medial epicondyle, which also helps to prevent the nerve from getting caught on the bony ridge and stretching when your elbow is bent. Now, eye strain is another one, also called computer vision syndrome. This affects about 50 to 90% of computer, smartphone, and tablet users, and it's expected to grow more as people begin using these devices. I know myself, as I'm getting older, I had to start wearing glasses. I can't even use my iPad without glasses. Sometimes you'll sit there and you'll try and drag it to make it a bit bigger, but then half what you're viewing online has gone off the screen. Or the battery will start dying so fast, you turn the brightness down, so now you're straining even harder to see it because you want your battery to last longer. So what ends up happening is we end up holding the digital devices closer to our eyes, closer than we would books. The eyes constantly need to refocus, and they work harder in order to focus on tiny fonts, images, and sizes. When we stare at something for extended periods of time, we actually don't blink as often as we do when we're not staring at something. So our eyes begin to dry out, they get sore. So as a result, we blink less often when we stare at screens. So often we'll see people get red eyes in the office. Some people keep a bottle of Visine in the desk just to help lubricate the eyes when the eyes start drying out. And the main symptoms, of course, are tired, dry, itchy, blurred vision, and burning eyes.
Okay, now looking at some of the literature that has been done, thank you. Looking at tablet use and laptop use, Chang and Lau did a study in 2016, and what they did is they looked at the different tilt angles of tablets. And what they found, which makes complete sense, is that the forces on the neck and the most discomfort would happen when they were placed at low angles or right on the desk, because then just like Trevor pointed out, when the forces on the neck are so much greater when you're looking down. So if you could place the tablets at a higher steep angle and maintain more neutral postures of the neck, it was associated with more relief and comfort. Young in 2012 also investigated the neck and head postures and found the exact same thing. He looked at 4 different tablet angles and found that the higher the tablet was placed at, it maintained those neutral neck postures and allowed for more comfort while using these devices. So those studies, a lot of ergonomics is common sense. sense. And when you think about it, it makes complete sense. You want to have your neck in a neutral position. You want to be comfortable, and our body usually tells us when we're not comfortable by giving us those pain triggers. Another study, Young in 2013, he looked at the postures of the wrist and shoulders during touchscreen of the tablets, and what he found was that touchscreen tablet users were exposed to more extreme wrist postures and less neutral when they were using these technological devices, and they were at a greater risk for musculoskeletal discomfort. So what he concluded is that tablets should be placed in some form of a case. You should use external devices if you're using them for a long term. There are devices that you can have with your tablet, small miniature keyboards, so you actually don't have to touch the screen. So if it is something that you're using for a long period of time, this would be something you want to do in order to maintain those neutral postures. When I was researching this topic, like I said, there was a lot out there. There's a lot that isn't relevant anymore because technology has changed so much. But I found this very interesting, that actually Apple looked into hand size and actually thought about, why would you want to have a cell phone that your hand couldn't hold, that you wouldn't be able to reach areas on the screen? It just doesn't make sense. So Steve Jobs, he believed that you should match the ergonomics of your hand. In 2010, this came out. And as competitors were getting larger devices, he said, well, it doesn't make sense. People are not going to use something that they can't hold in their hand comfortably. We now know this is obviously not true because we have like the iPhone 6 Plus, the Note 4, these phones are massive, but that's just what is consumer driven, right? So we want something that's bigger, so that's what's happening. But it's interesting in 2010 that they were actually thinking of our anthropometrics and how we use something in the comfort of the user. It's obviously gone away from that, but this is the commercial he came up with, and it's interesting.
Your thumb, it goes from here to here. This bigger screen goes from here to here. Now, that's either A, an amazing coincidence, or B, a dazzling display of common sense. Pretty sure it's the common sense thing.
So it's just interesting, and like at one point in time, we were thinking this. We were looking at our hands and how devices actually fit into them. Whether one day maybe it'll come back to this. I mean, you look at the screen sizes in these cell phones now. They're almost the size of tablets. Like it's crazy. I don't know how guys fit them in their pockets. First of all, at least women have a purse to put them in, but they're just massive. So as I was researching that, I came upon a lot of stuff that looked at like your hand size and cell phone size. So what are the 3 factors that you should consider when you're purchasing a cell phone? Whether people actually look at these or not, maybe I'm biased and I would. I actually don't even really like my iPhone 6 because I find it too big. I stuck with my 5 as long as I could until it died on me. But what they say is, like, what can you see when you're looking at the screen? What can your thumbs physically touch? When you're holding it in one hand, what can you reach on the screen? And what can you hold comfortably in your hand? I mean, to hold your cell phone in one hand, I think a lot of people, if they can, they try to use both hands to text, to do whatever. I know myself, I tend to rest it on my pinky for some reason when I'm using one hand, and I've already started to feel some discomfort in my pinky. I don't know if anybody else does that, but if you really pay attention to how you're holding it, or maybe I was doing it for too long. But these are things that you should consider when you're buying a cell phone. But I don't feel like we always look at that. We're looking for the bigger, better, more graphics. And this came out too. It was looking at hand size. So you can see, I don't know if this is, going to work. Anyway, on the far left, it shows the average woman's hand size, and then by it, the average man's hand size. And then associated with it, it shows you what the cell phones are that we're looking at now. So the iPhone 6, the 6 Plus, the Note 4. And I mean, if you're using the 6 Plus, your hand has to be bigger than Shaquille O'Neal's to actually reach the parts of the screen. So, I mean, it's kind of alarming that, so these devices really weren't intended for one-handed use at all, because we don't fit them. I actually have, I'm going to pass it around. There's a few different copies, but it's just pictures of hands, and that's how big your hand would need to be to reach all areas of this one's the Samsung Galaxy S5, and this one's the iPhone 6. So it's interesting because they're massive, and it just doesn't even to fathom that your hand would be that big to reach all areas of the screen, which is obviously why we use two hands. But the other thing is they're called smartphones for a reason, and they can do a lot of things that I think people don't take the time to learn, and I was one of those people. My iPhone can do a lot of things to make it easier for me to use. And for example, you can bring all your apps down to half the screen by tapping the middle button twice, not pushing it, but tapping it twice. And so then they are all within your thumb reach. So there is little things that you can do that they've tried to make it easier, but again, I feel like we kind of just pick up the phone and we use it. I had to Google different things that we could do with our iPhone, because I was one of those people that I just grabbed it and I used it. There's night shift on an iPhone, which will allow you, for the eye strain part of it, you can make the screen actually go, it's kind of like yellowy, and I have it on mine. Now at night, I couldn't imagine having a bright white screen. So there's all these things that you can set it up actually to do every day when it gets dark. And then in the morning, it stays that way. I was gonna say probably around, like when the light comes out, it goes back to white. So there's different things that you can do with your iPhone to make it easier and more user-friendly. We'll try it. Again, so this is looking at two different phones. So looking at the iPhone 6 and the Samsung Galaxy S5. And what they did is the red area is showing the outline area that your thumbs could not reach. And so on the left here, it's showing the female versus the male on both phones. So these ones aren't, I guess, terrible for men. For women, it makes sense. There's a little bit more of the screen that you cannot reach. Sorry. But when you go to the iPhone 6 Plus and the Samsung Galaxy Note 4, these red areas become even larger. So there's more areas of the phone we cannot reach with with just our thumb. We were going to have to hold with both of our hands. So it's just interesting that we're not really taking into consideration the size of our hands when these devices are being developed. So what are the solutions that we can do if we're having increased use of these items? So there's different cases that you can put on so you can reduce having to have that grip on the phone the whole time. A lot of the problem comes from you're constantly gripping something. So there are cases, like the one up there shows, that you can slip your fingers through, and so then you're not actually having to physically grip it anymore. There's stands if you have to refer to it, whether there's notes on your phone. You can also, if it's something you need to refer to while you're on the computer, you can throw your phone on your inline document holder, so that way it's actually tilted, it's not flat down. So there's ways to get around it. If you're on your phone for long periods of time, use your earbuds. I think every single phone comes with earbuds, and you can use them, either put it on speakerphone, use them when you're on long calls, or you can use your speakerphone. That way you don't have to hold on to it. Use voice interaction. You can set to call everyone through your voice, so then you're not having to push buttons on your phone. Again, there's the night shift. There's different, I'm sure Samsung, I'm not familiar with Samsung products as much, but I'm sure there's different shortcuts on it that makes it more user-friendly as well. So I would get to know your smartphone, because they're smart and they can do a lot of stuff, but they also, I think they're trying to, put in different things to make them more user-friendly as well when it comes to the design of our hands. Laptop solutions. So if you're laptop users at work, you should always have either a docking station, you should have some type of riser to get that angle up, and you should always, always, always have external mouse and a keyboard if you're using it for long-term use. If you're just taking your laptop to a meeting, if anything, I would recommend having at least a mouse with you. But typically during a meeting, you're more referencing, not typing as much. But if that's your main computer, you should have a docking station at your desk, or you should have at least, if you're working it from home and you have a riser, you want to get that monitor so it's at that neutral neck posture for you. So these are things to keep aware of if you have laptops in the workplace. Tablet solutions. So because tablets are becoming more frequent in the field, there are different companies like Ergocentric and Ergotron are coming up with different ways to mount these items to your existing workstation. So you see in the top picture there, and it's putting the tablet right next to the monitor. So that way you can reference it and maintain neutral neck postures. Again, you could use your inline document holder. You can place it right in line with your computer, just like you would a paper document. But you want to be aware of how these are positioned. You don't want them flat on the desk. Just like our documents, we don't want flat on the desk. We want to bring them in line with our computer. There's different, here are also different solutions. So there's different stands that you can get. You can have a C-clamp that mounts to your desk if you need to be able to visually see it more. There's a stylus. There has been some studies with the stylus that isn't always the best option either. It depends on the use and how long. And again, the gripping of the iPad. Some of the studies looking at iPad, a lot of it happens in the opposite hand of you holding it the whole time, so because you're holding those static postures, which can be very detrimental. So having there's like a slip end, so that way you can just adjust it and tighten it to your hand. You don't have to hold that grip. That would be a great solution for someone that has to, have it out in the field. There's carrying cases that have the handle. Any cases that they can be angled up for at home use is great. And in the classroom. So there's been some studies looking at the classroom, and there's been Straker's presented guidelines for appropriate physical development of children while they're using these computers. So similar to us, they want you to take breaks. We don't want anyone to be static in the workplace. Whether you have a sit-stand workstation, whether you're, and even if you don't, we want to see movement. We don't want any posture to be held too long, and the same goes for kids. They need to be moving. Every 30 minutes, they say, get up, take breaks, use those input devices. So again, have external keyboards, have the external mouse, and encourage them to move and alter their position, because kids can be the worst for just sitting there. Like my 2-year-old uses an iPad, and but they can be the worst. They almost zone in worse than adults, and they'll maintain those postures. Just like that one study said, regardless of discomfort, kids will continue doing it. So we need to make sure we position these things properly for them. So we need to look at the anthropometrics of who's using them and design there. So what can we do at work if we're using these? So same with any other office environment, whether you use tablets or not, you need to take breaks often. We say drink lots of water, because even if you're not one to get up and take a break, your body will tell you need to go to the washroom, so you're going to have to get up. So it's kind of a trick to get you moving, especially when you're one that gets kind of stuck into a task for 2 hours. You want to get up every 30 minutes if you can. Be dynamic when you're sitting even. You don't want to maintain static postures. For eye strain, the 20-20 rule, to look away 20 feet, stare at something for 20 seconds, and then come back, it helps reset your eyes. And getting up and moving away from your computer helps that. You don't want to be looking at that screen. The new resolutions and the pixels and everything, I find now a lot of people, the strain happens faster. And I've even found that positioning of monitors, sometimes people now like to be back a little bit further than typically they did before, which is completely fine. I always say, as long as you're still maintaining neutral posture while you're seated. So you want to change the position throughout the day, stretch. It's all about moving around, really. And that is it. And yeah, any questions anybody has for Trevor and I?
No, it's funny. I think I'm one of the few people who actually don't use my cell phone. I often get complaints from the coworkers. I tried texting you, you didn't get back to me. I only use my phone when I travel for work away from home. That's the only time I use it. I refuse to text, so I guess I'm still kind of old school when it comes to that. But any questions at all? Yes? Okay, so for those online, the question is, how do touch screens affect shoulders? Want to take that one?
Sure. I have to talk to the microphone. So with that, just exactly how you demonstrated, you're reaching out, you're abducting, and you're rotating your shoulder every time. Typically, depending on what they're using, this is why the laptop touchscreen isn't as good, because at least with a tablet, you could position it a little bit closer and you can maintain some neutral postures of the shoulder. With the laptop, it's further away just by nature of the keyboard being in front of it. So there is some shoulder movement and abduction, and depending on how far away it is placed from you, it could be more extreme or less. You'd have to assess the actual setup, but it is definitely possible, and there are studies out there that there is forces placed on the shoulder, because as soon as you get them away from your body, and especially if they're abducted and in conjunction with an awkward posture, the forces are only going to increase.
And of course, it also depends on duration of use. I mean, I've been into a lot of long-term care facilities where they'll have an iPad mounted on the wall about this height, and they're inputting med airs or medications, etc., and they could be doing that for 20 minutes that they're reaching up overhead. And of course, we've talked other years about rotator cuff tears. So if someone's got arthritis of the shoulder and they're being required to either use a touchscreen laptop or something that's required too far away from the body, that can lead to long-term problems such as rotator cuff tears, especially if they have arthritic changes to the shoulder already. Yes?
Talk about texting stuff in partners. I have it in my friends. I can't use my thumb for texting. Everybody studies using the finger texting. I'm the old-fashioned finger texter. Is that just as bad for your index finger for texting?
Okay, so the question online is texting with your index finger better than texting with your thumb?
So all of the studies I came across were typically using the thumb. I think anything that's going to be repetitive is going to potentially lead to some type of, could potentially lead to some type of injury, but I haven't seen anything there. I mean, with your fingers like that, it's a more natural movement to me than using your thumbs, because you're abducting, so I haven't seen anything out there. I don't know if Trevor or any other OCAL ergos have seen anything out there with the fingers, but all of the research I've come across is thumb.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, once again, old school, still the best school. I text like I type. So I find it easier. I mean, I watch these kids and they're like, first of all, my fingers are too fat to hit the buttons half the time. So, I mean, I personally find the hunt and click approach a heck of a lot easier. Not as fast, but less typos. Yes?
The only thing I think of for eye strain, and it really did help me, I don't know if you have the iPhone, was that night shift I was talking about. And I'm not sure if any of you Samsung users, do they have that on theirs as well? I don't know if it's an app you can, but it's awesome. And I literally say, I don't know if I could go back, because it literally like yellows the screen, and you can kind of pick how faint you want it or how much of the night shift you want. But I find it like tremendously helps with eye strain. So again, I'm not sure if, are you a Samsung? Yeah. You could increase the font size. Would that help you if sometimes increase? Well, I think it's in nature too. You've had your eyes closed all day. Like, I mean, in general, myself too. And I think that's what there's a lot out there saying as far as how tied we are to our cell phones and looking at them before bed. It's all that multitasking we're doing. There's a lot of psychosocial stuff happening with using those devices and how they're almost attached. They are attached to our hip. They're always there. I don't know. I can only suggest maybe going and giving, easing into, don't grab that phone right away. Let yourself, I know it's hard. I think it's almost natural for all of us to we wake up in the morning, and that's unfortunately what we do. The way culture's changed is, it's kind of sad. I almost, to a certain extent, wish we didn't have cell phones. I feel like I always have to multitask. I don't know if anybody else is in that boat, even if it's at home at night. It's like I can't even watch TV. I have TV, I have my phone in my hand. I'm like, why is this happening? And I'm sure I'm not the only person, but I just wish, to a certain extent, when my dad got me a cell phone in university, I was so upset. I was like, why do I even want this thing? Now it's attached, and I think it's part of our culture, and I wish we weren't like that. Maybe it's the old school in me, but
once again, old school
yes,
is the best school.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Change your routine. Get up, go to the washroom, make a coffee. If you have dogs, take the dogs out. Give your eyes a chance to wake up before you automatically go and reach. Because as Melissa said, if you don't have that, even the contrast changer, that's a pretty harsh, bright light with that white screen first thing in the morning. And same thing at nighttime. I mean, people are reading on their iPads. You're in a dark, 9 times out of 10, you're in a dark room. Turn the brightness right down, because you are going to have, the brighter the screen, the more trouble you're going to have falling asleep at night. So bring the darkness down to a comfortable level where you're not straining, but it's also not too bright, so you're not getting that contrast. Because you're in a dark room with a bright screen, that's almost like getting night blindness when you're driving down the highway, going from the one contrast to the other. Yeah?
Are you doing more research on how bright things, how large the font, what the resolution should be?
They're always doing research on that stuff.
For less eye strain?
Yeah, I mean, there's always research being done on, they've done research on eye strain since computers first came out. I mean, for example, that's where they came up with the standard. When you're working at a computer, the monitor should be arm's length away from you to allow for proper viewing distance. That the top of the screen should be level with seated eye height to reduce neck flexion so you're not experiencing neck pain. So, the default setting on a monitor for the font size has been researched to be, the ideal. So as a result, that's constantly always being researched by different researchers. So to answer your question is, yes, someone out there is probably doing it. Any other questions?